It's time now for another look at some business news, and there are new rules set to be announced in Brussels this Tuesday to ban products made by forced labour. Now, our business editor Charles Pellegrin is with me here in the studio. Charles.
That's right, Thomas. The move by the Commission, driven by EU lawmakers, especially concerned about the labor conditions in the western region of Xinjiang in China. This comes a day after the International Labour Organization released its report on the state of modern slavery on Monday, and the UN agency reporting that the number of people forced into more modern forms of slavery rose by a fifth in recent years to around 50 million, and within that number, which includes people in forced marriages, are people who are coerced into work. That number in 2021 reached just over 27 million people, as you can see in these pictures, increasing by just over 2.5 million people since 2016. The factors behind this increase: a rise in poverty exacerbated by a number of crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic, armed conflicts, and climate change. The ILO pointed to concern about forced labor in Xinjiang in its report. The United States enacted a law banning products from that region. The EU's rule, however, will apply to all products made from forced labor, including those made within the bloc. Uighurs tells us more.
A year ago, in her State of the Union speech, the head of the European Commission declared,
"We will propose a ban on products on our market that have been made by forced labor, because human rights are not for sale at any price."
Now the EU executive is set to unveil its proposal for such new rules. Unlike the United States, which has placed a blanket ban on products made in China's Xinjiang province over alleged human rights abuses of Uyghurs, the European ban will focus on all products made by forced labour, including those produced inside the 27-member bloc. Some EU countries already have domestic laws against products stemming from the practice, but that's not enough. In a call for evidence requesting public feedback on the issue over the summer, the Commission said,
"Companies operating across a single market and beyond need legal certainty and a level playing field for their sustainable growth. Without EU action, products linked with forced labour in supply chains cannot be prevented from entering the EU market."
Some members of the European Parliament wanted a US-style ban targeting China, which the EU executive avoided for fear of breaching World Trade Organization rules on non-discrimination. The UN's International Labour Organization says 27.6 million people around the world are being forced to work.
And elsewhere, a U.S. delegation led by Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo visited Mexico. The two neighbors trying to patch things up after President López Obrador's drive to tighten state control of the energy market prompted accusations of unfair competition from U.S. companies. Well, it would seem that both sides softened their tone during this meeting and that they could work towards a fix. And they also spoke about joining forces to invest in clean energy in areas like electric vehicles, solar power, and semiconductors. A pilot project is in the works to bring manufacturing of semiconductors closer to the U.S., what's referred to as nearshoring. Let's listen in to the U.S. Commerce Secretary on this topic.
In China and Taiwan, there's about 60, the testing, packaging, and assembly industry for semiconductors is a $60 billion industry. In North America, it's $3 billion. So there is a huge opportunity for growth in North America and job creation just in the semiconductor supply chain. And as we discussed today, that doesn't even include the jobs for printed circuit boards, printers, computers.
And let's take a look at how the markets are faring this hour. In Europe, stocks trading higher at the open as investors await U.S. inflation data for the month of August. Later in the day, the expectation being that prices are going to moderate slightly. As you can see, the FTSE in London just up above the 0% line, the Paris CAC 40 up by 0.5%, and the DAX in Frankfurt up by 0.25%. In Asia, the similar picture we're seeing, and this is there in the green as well, the Nikkei in Tokyo closing up 0.25%, and the Kospi in Seoul up almost 3%. In China, whether Shanghai or Hong Kong, those indices just barely above the flat line. Let's take a look at some other stories making headlines around the business world. In the U.S., the largest private sector nurses strike in the country's history started on Monday. About 15,000 nurses walked off the job to protest understaffing and overwork, and will do so for 3 days. This highlights the staff shortages seen around the country in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. Other strikes could follow in other states as well. And Britain's largest container port, Felixstowe, will have to contend with another strike. The company that operates it said it received notice from the United Trade Union the Unite trade union that workers are going to stage an 8-day strike action from September 27th to October 5th. This after talks on pay failed to lead to an agreement. More than 1,900 workers had walked out last month in the first strike at the port since 1989. And Peloton is shaking things up. The chair and co-founder of the fitness company, John Foley, resigned along with 2 other executives. Big move under CEO Barry McCarthy, who arrived in February. This follows a tough few months where it was announced the company cut nearly 800 jobs, ended in-house production of its bikes, and teamed up with Amazon to sell its bikes and gear. So lots of hills and valleys for Peloton there after reaching highs during the pandemic, now more a low stage.
Okay, Charles Pellegrin, our business editor, thank you very much for that business summary.